I'd like to call to order the Budget Committee meeting for the Dickson County Commission. Want to read a statement here in the beginning. This meeting is being conducted on August 17th, 2020, pursuant to the guidance from the Controller's Office and in accordance with Governor Lee's Executive Order number 51. The Budget Committee and Budget Advisory Committee meeting, as well as the regular August meeting of the Dickson County Commission with proper notice, is being held electronically. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the county's YouTube channel as necessary to protect the public's health, safety, and welfare in light of the coronavirus. Only county personnel, officials, and media are physically present at this meeting. Further, I'm requesting the Dickson County Commission include this determination in the minutes for these meetings. We understand that we, the members of the Dickson County Commission, serve the citizens of Dickson County and need to continue to do the work of and for the county, which is why we are currently live streaming this meeting for the benefit of the public through our YouTube channel. A recording of this meeting will be available on our YouTube channel, and a physical copies will be made available at the Dickson County Mayor's Office within 48 hours of this meeting for any citizen who is interested in viewing or copying. Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Simpkins?
Here.
Mr. Eby?
Here.
Mr. McElwain? Here. Mr. Buckner?
Here.
Mayor Roberts?
Here. We have all 5 members of the Budget Committee, and then everyone else here is part of the Budget Advisory Committee. Thank you for being here. Tonight, on this, we typically have a public hearing on this, but because of the COVID virus, we ask individuals to submit their questions for us to read, but we received no questions or comments on that tonight, which is typical because we seldom have anyone show up when we have one live. So at this point, we'll move forward into questions for the budget. Mr. Hall's here to answer any questions you may have on the county general budget, and Dr. Weeks is here for school budgets. You have any questions for any of them? Commissioner Eby.
Did we work out the deal with the fund balance in the school budget? Did we work that out?
I think we have. Dr. Weeks, were you wanting to say something on that before we go forward?
Be glad to if you allow me to. Commissioners, thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing me to be here. And I'd like to start off by apologizing to you for my attendance last time in a virtual setting. I thought that I'd understood that everybody was going to be in a virtual setting, and I feel like I could have better communicated with you last time if we were all here in person, and so I'm glad to be able to be here. The information that I've shared with you through email and the information that you have about our budget, just wanted to go back and highlight. I think after the mayor and I have met, and we've met with staff several times, I guess what I was trying to communicate with you last time is we're really not in disagreement over what our fund balance is going to be. The summary sheet that I sent you was the very last sheet in the packet that you received. And again, I think those numbers are actually the numbers that we have that match the numbers that we received from county finance. And so I don't think there's any disagreement. There may have been some disagreement the way it appeared on the page, and I apologize for that, and I take responsibility for that. But in terms of where we are in fund balance, I don't think there's any disagreement. And again, I defer to the mayor on that, but I believe we're on the same page with where we are in those two numbers, and I appreciate you asking that question, and I appreciate you allowing me to make those statements.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks. Any questions for Dr. Weeks? Yes, Commissioner Simpkins.
Where will most of the increase in this budget fall? What specific line item? I mean, can you give us an idea so as the year goes along, we can keep track of the money being spent out of this, how it's being spent, or what it's even will be used, what it's going to be needed, what can be returned, or questions like that?
Yes, sir. I'm going to say, Mr. Simpkins, thank you for that question. Most of the changes in the budgets are not due to increases. And I think I shared with you last time, the budget summary document, and it showed that almost in every category, we had decreased line items everywhere. I shared with you a list of items that had been cut. We have cut many dollars from last year's budget, and I've shared that information with you. We hate to do that, but the change, which in essence had a net effect of cutting, we received about $1 million less than we did last year from the state funds. So the only big increase and the major increase that you'll see in our school budget this year, if you go down line item by line item, the biggest increase that we've seen is in textbooks. And last year we did not purchase textbooks. It was not an adoption year. This year it's come around and it's English Language Arts textbook adoption year. And so the English Language Arts textbooks are the most expensive textbooks that we buy. So much so that even to help the budgeting process this year, we split that into 2 payments. So we went to the textbook companies and said, can we pay half of it this year and half of it next year? And unfortunately, that's going to work for us from a budgeting standpoint because next year is not a textbook adoption year either. And so we're taking the English Language Arts textbooks, which right off the top of my head, I believe is $1.3 million, splitting it into 2 years and splitting it over 2 payments. So I think the number that you see here is 660, 675 in the textbooks that we'll spend this year. We'll have to do that again next year. So the increase in those textbook costs plus the decrease in revenues coming from the state has about $1.6 million, you know. And then when I think the first time we made a budget presentation, we talked about just the normal contracts that we have with cleaning service, different things like that. Those amounts on average would go up 2.5% to 3% per year. And so those automatic, and I'm going to call those fixed costs because, you know, we have to have janitorial services. We have to have those, and they have built-in increases when we sign contracts with those individuals. So those are the fixed costs. When you take a look at our budget side by side from those things to what we've done each year, again, I've provided you that list of cuts that we've made. I don't want to read through those again, but you know, we're not giving employees a raise this year. We've cut teaching positions out. We've cut all of our library books out. We're not buying library books this year. We've cut. We usually pay people to come before school or after school to provide tutoring for kids that are behind or have fallen behind. We're not doing that this year. So, I mean, we have cut. Some of the things that we have are going to be able to absorb are from some one-time money that the government is sending us through the CARES Act, and I think most people have either heard it as ESSR or CARES Act dollars. So we're going to try to reimburse because you know we realize that some students may have fallen behind after being out of school for such a long period of time, and we think they will need some tutoring and need some help catching up. So we can use some of those CARES dollars to do that. But we've also had to provide technology for our students that are going to be learning virtually or learning from home this year. So between the technology costs, between the decrease in state revenue and the increase in textbooks, I mean, that's essentially the changes in the budget. Other line items, if you go down through, you won't find a 0.5% increase in any of them at all.
Chromebooks you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
How much, do you have the number on that?
For this year?
We were lucky and we were able to, when we found out schools were going to be shut down for the remainder of last year, we got ahead of the curve and we purchased a large purchase of Chromebooks from last year. We will probably spend say $300,000 to $400,000 in Chromebooks this year and other technology that's needed either by our students or by our teachers to teach with. If we go to a virtual environment, we have to have, you know, just as you have in the chambers here this evening, you've got to have cameras to do that with, microphones to do that with, and things like that. And so a lot of the devices that our teachers need to teach in that method, they don't have those. And so finding that technology for them financially is a challenge, but also it's going to be a physical challenge because everybody in the United States is looking for those devices just like we are.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks. Commissioner Beatty. Commissioner Beatty, I'm sorry to interrupt you, because for folks that here at home, just holler in that microphone.
I asked you the other night, and I couldn't hear you very well, and you probably couldn't hear me. My question was, we're talking about those cuts. So is there cuts? Is there things that, in this budget, that you do not, I mean, didn't have last year? Or do we have everything we have last year, did we just not get what we asked for?
No, sir.
So there are cuts that we-
When we say we are not giving employee raises,
You had that and don't have that
that's a
this year.
cut.
Right.
When we say we're not purchasing library books, that's a cut. When
Well,
we
I don't know if that's a cut or is that not planning? I mean, you know, you're talking about these books and you say we had to have them. I mean, do y'all not know that that's coming? And that looks like that should be a line item every year that we know in, 5 years down the road, we've got to have these books.
We know each year
Okay.
what books
Okay.
are for the next 7 years. We know what books will be in the cycle. Last year, we cut that number out of the budget to help come to a number which was palatable to the commission. In order to get that, I cut that out, just as we've cut library books out. I hate to cut library books out, and I hate to say we're not buying library books for our students in school.
Well, I agree,
in-
but
in order
when
to
you're
get
talking
to a
about
number
cuts
that-
and you're even talking about the teacher salaries, I mean, I guess the way I'm looking at it, if we don't have it, it's not, if we're just not getting it, it's not a cut. If we took it out of the budget that you had last year and didn't give it back to you, then that's a cut. And I guess that's what that was my only question that night, and I didn't know.
This will
I
be
just
the-
was wondering if you had a bunch of cuts
This will be
that
the
you
first.
had last year
yes.
that you will not have this year. So is there any big items that you had last year that you do not have this year?
This will be the first year in my 9 years in Dickson County Schools that we've not given a raise to teachers. I consider that a cut. I consider that a cut when
I can understand that. I take that as that you didn't give them one. Now, absolutely, do they need it? Absolutely. I don't see how they do what they do. My next question is that I'm concerned about is we keep getting into that fund balance and getting into that fund balance. And, we're at 16, we're at 12, we're at 7 now. And I guess I want to voice my concern to the school board that that's not going to last very long. And there will have to be some tax increase to cover that. I wish that they would realize that we can't keep pulling from this fund balance that much every year. Well, we can, but there's gonna be a big tax increase. It's not, at some point, we just it keeps dwindling down, and that's my only thing that I'd like to say is I wish the school board and you would consider that and watch that. Now, again, y'all have done great. You've got probably one of the healthiest fund balances in the state. But I'm just saying, and you can see it as well, I mean, we're headed in the wrong direction on that fund balance, and I guess I like to see it up there and healthy like that, but, I'm gonna vote for the budget, but, I just wanna voice my concern to the school board that they watch that fund balance and do the best they can as y'all have, and, just seems like we're pulling a little bit out of it. I know this is bad times, or not good times, but, I just wish y'all would watch that fund balance going forward.
If I could, Mayor Rowell, let me go back and address the question that was asked earlier. In terms of employee raises, again, this is the first time in 9 years that we have not given a raise of some sort. And so I do consider that a cut. I consider it a double cut when we look at our neighboring counties, which will get raises, and that puts our teachers and our employees farther behind those other counties. And I'm going out competing for teachers in the other counties, and they're seeing higher salaries in some other counties. That we compete with Clarksville, Montgomery, we compete with Williamson County on a daily basis for teachers. We lost 2 administrators the week before school started in Dickson County because they went to another county to make more money. That's tough. When we can't pay raises, I think that's a difficult time. When we cut library books out, we cut all of our homebound teachers out. So if a student were sick last year, they had the benefit of a homebound teacher to go into their home and help them if they were out 10 days. We've cut all of that out. We've cut stipends out to pay for teachers that the last 9 years, if we needed them to do some work, we've cut that out. We talked about just over and over, my maintenance budget is $2,500 less than it was last year. We know things are gonna break, we know things are gonna need repair. We've taken that down. Those are some examples of things that we have directly cut. School buses, we know those have been cut from the budget. We know and had that conversation that those are gonna have to come back and ask for amendments. I understand the concerns about fund balance, and I would say, from a budgeting standpoint, we are very aware of that, but in terms of dollars not generated by additional tax revenue, and the school system is very blessed to have the tax increases that we had last year, but remember, those tax increases went specifically to operate Burns Middle School. And so, other than that, for the last 10 years, we've not redirected taxes toward education in Dickson County. We have shifted money. We've tried to be more efficient. We've tried to operate more efficiently. Yes, we have benefited from growth in the economy, but in terms of just dollars directed toward education, we have not done that. And so again, I would say that is a challenge for the school system to operate that way. But to your point about using and budgeting fund balance, for the last 5 years, for instance, in 2014, we budgeted just as we're doing this year. It showed on paper that we needed $4 million to fund balance, out of fund balance to balance our budget, excuse me. Even though on paper it showed $4.4 million, we only used $500,000 of that. The next year, we showed that we needed $4.4 million to balance our budget, just like we're doing this year. Actually, we came out $2.1 million to the good. So on paper, 4.4, we ended up, because of revenue, 2.1. The next year, we budgeted 2.9 to balance fund balance. We came out 3.4 to the good. So, and again, I think those are just 3 examples of a positive economy and things happening in a positive manner. But I think if you'll look back over the last 5 years, it's not just the economy, but I think our office is operating more efficiently. I think our schools are operating more efficiently overall. And we continue to want to provide that high quality education for everybody that we hope is something that the county is very proud of. We hope it is a bargain compared to what some other districts are spending on education. And again, knowing that our students in Dickson County need to be competitive as they go out in the world and seeking scholarships and jobs and positions and things of that nature, they need the same quality of educational facilities. They need the same quality of teaching materials. Our teachers need a same or a similar salary and benefit package as they have in other counties, and so we are very well aware of those things. So thank you for sharing those.
My concern, just saying that, I guess what I'm looking at is, in 3 years, we went from 16 million to 7 million. So 16, the audited 218-19 was 16 million two. The proposed this year is, the ending fund balance is 7.6. So
And-
I get that. Like I said, but it's a concern, I guess.
The $16 million is from the audited fund balance of 2019. So that number's a year old. It's going to be, it'll be March, I guess, April or March of 2021 before we have an audited fund balance. I would not be a bit surprised to see it much closer to 12 or 13, much more so than I would 7.
Thank you. Commissioner Eby?
I'm just curiosity, what is the percentage of kids learning at home as opposed to in the classroom? Do y'all know that yet?
Between 22 and 24%.
At home?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And slightly less than surrounding counties. If you take out Clarksville Montgomery is a little bit higher than that. It's hard to say with some other school districts because, again, we have started earlier than several did. There are several school systems that pushed their start dates 2 and 3 weeks down the road, and so I talked to a couple of directors today, and they're, we're going to start next Monday. How does it work for you guys? And so,
Yeah, how is it so far? How's it going with that? Pretty good?
been very pleased. Again, with that number of students out of school, it's made some challenges there. We've had an awful lot of people that have wanted to swap either in because they decided to elect for virtual and they want back in now, or vice versa. They try to go in and now they want out because of staffing reasons. That's, I'm not going to say completely impossible, but it's not possible very easily. And so the commitments they made are going to carry us up to Christmas with that group. We've learned new terms like contact tracing and having to, the last 4 years we've encouraged people to be at school, and attendance is important, and now it's important that you stay home if you're not feeling well. And so that's kind of a mind shift in philosophy for us to talk that to families as well. But it's just like in society, Mr. Eby, when we are dealing with, mainly I think our schools are healthy environments, but we don't control what people do when they go out on the weekends or who they sit by at church or who they sit by at the ballpark. And so if you were exposed to somebody outside and you've brought that into the school building, now it becomes a school problem, and we have to contact trace and follow Department of Health and Department of Education guidelines. And so we're spending an awful lot of time doing that right now, and trying to help parents understand the Department of Health guidelines of, if you come in close contact with someone, having to stay out of school 10 days or having to stay out of school 14 days. And so those are, it's unfortunate that that's where we are, but, those are the guidelines that we have to go by, and I will say today, because those are changing rapidly as well. Thank you for asking them.
Thank you. Any questions on the budget? If Dr. Weeks will be here for other business, but let's stay on the budget. Any questions on the budget for Dr. Weeks?
Well, I just gonna ask him, do you ever have any sound numbers, what it's gonna cost to operate the Burton School?
In terms of utilities or operational costs overall,
Everything, laborers, teachers, the whole 9 yards.
I'll be more than happy to provide that to you guys in the morning, because we now have to report expenditures by school to the state each year. So I think we have that. We'll email that to all commissioners tomorrow morning, first thing.
Okay, and your budget's gonna be $70,997,000. What does that equate to each child going to school? What does it cost each kid to going to school? And how does that relate to the surrounding counties? I hear about the surrounding counties all the time. How does that work?
Let me make sure I make myself a note to get both those pieces of information for you. I'll get you the per pupil expenditures of what Dickson Countyans spend for per pupil expenditures. I'll send you the Burns Middle School expenditures. And again, that's going to be a little skewed last year because obviously we were not in school
Yeah.
a full year. So that will be, salaries will be close. Utilities obviously are going to be the biggest difference there, utilities and bus costs. But per pupil expenditures and per pupil expenditures for surrounding counties.
There's a lot of people that ask me that,
Yes, sir.
and I have no idea what to tell them, so.
Be glad to get that for all of you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions on the budget? Thank you, Dr. Weeks.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions on any budgets? Open floor for a motion from a member of the Budget Committee to move this on to our regular session to follow. Motion by Commissioner Eby, second by Commissioner Buckner. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Mayrob?
Aye.
Mr. Simpkins?
Aye.
Mr. Eby?
Aye.
Mr. McElwain? Mr. Buckner?
Thank you. That's all the business come before the Budget Committee at this point in time. I'll entertain a motion and a second from somebody on the Budget Committee. Motion by Commissioner McElwain, second by Commissioner Buckner for adjournment. All in favor, vote by stating aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. I want to call to order now the County Commission meeting for August 17th. Commissioner Ellis, would you lead us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this day that you've given us. We pray that you'll be with us tonight as we conduct the business of the county. We pray that everything we say and do will be pleasing to you. We want to lift up the people in our county and community and all across the United States. It's got this horrible coronavirus. We pray that you'll heal people and comfort their families. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Mr. Simpkins?
Here.
Mr. Eby?
Here.
Mr. McElwain? Mr. Beatty? Mr. Dawson? Ms. Spicer? Mr. Buckner? Mr. Ellis? Mr. Shepherd? Mr. Corlew? Ms. Hayes?
We do have a quorum. First order of business is approval of the minutes of the July 17th, 2020 regular session. Open the floor for a motion. Motion by Commissioner Hayes, second by Commissioner Corlew. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor vote by stating aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item is committee reports. Any committees to report? Commissioner Simpkins.
We were able to have a ag committee meeting. Wasn't many of us be able to tune in, but we did do it by phone. Took care of business. Maybe someday we'll get back to where we meet together.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other committees to report? Thank you. Next item of business is appointments. This is a reappointment that we brought before the work session 3 weeks ago of Mr. Jason Epley on the Sanitation Board. We'll open the floor for a motion on that. Motion by Commissioner Ellis. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Buckner. Any discussion on this? Need to take a roll on all these. On this, we will have a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Simpkins?
Aye.
Mr. Eby?
Aye.
Mr. McElwain? Mr. Beatty? Mr. Dawson? Ms. Spicer? Mr. Buckner?
Aye.
Mr. Ellis? Mr. Shepherd? Mr. Corlew? Ms. Hayes?
Trying to be an individual out there. We knew what you meant. We'll find that name tag for you. Next item of business we covered earlier in the public hearing. The budget approved by the Budget Committee included a tax rate that's the same as last year, which is $2.35. And having received no comments on the budget and the tax rate from the budget, we'll move on to the resolutions. Under resolutions, we'll go in order as presented here. Resolution to accept and approve county trustees report and errors and double assessments. We discussed this last time. This is a correction that has to be done each year. And this is brought forward before us to do that bookkeeping effort. I'll open the floor for a motion. Motion by Commissioner Hayes. To have a second. Second by Commissioner Spicer. Any discussion or questions? Ms. Pendergrass is not here, but I'll be glad to try to explain anything you may have on this if you have a question. Hearing no questions, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Simpkins?
Aye.
Mr. Eby?
Aye.
Mr. McElwain? Mr. Beatty? Mr. Dawson? Ms. Spicer? Mr. Buckner?
Aye.
Mr. Ellis? Mr. Shepherd? Mr. Corlew? Ms. Hayes?
The next resolution is to establish a program to supplement the property tax relief program of the state of Tennessee provided for in Title 67, Chapter 5, Part 7 of Tennessee Code annotated. Whereas the county legislative body for the county of Dickson, Tennessee has recognized the need for provide financial assistance to certain needy citizens of this county. And whereas the state of Tennessee through its General Assembly has established a program whereby elderly low-income homeowners, disabled homeowners, and disabled veterans as those taxpayers defined in Tennessee Code Annotated Title 67, Chapter 5, Part 7 are provided financial assistance through a refund of property taxes paid by the state appropriation. Whereas the General Assembly in passing Chapter 739 of the Public Acts of 2006 amended Tennessee Code Annotated 67-5 65-701J to provide that any county, municipality, or metropolitan government may provide for the appropriation of additional funds to supplement the program for tax relief for elderly, low-income homeowners, disabled homeowners, and disabled veterans. Now, therefore, it be resolved by the county legislative body for the county of Dickson, Tennessee, meeting its regular session on this 17th day of August 2020 at Charlotte, Dickson County, Tennessee, that Section 1, the county legislative body hereby expresses its intent to exercise the authority provided in Tennessee Code Annotated 67-5-701J to provide financial assistance to elderly, low-income homeowners, disabled homeowners, and disabled veterans as those taxpayers as defined in Tennessee Code Annotated 67-5702 through 67-5704. Only those taxpayers who qualified under Tennessee Code Annotated 67-5-702 through 67-5-704 are eligible for this additional tax relief. In order to receive this relief, any eligible taxpayer shall have previously applied for and obtained the relief authorized by Tennessee Code Annotated 67-5-702 through 67-5-704 by the state of Tennessee. The tax relief authorization by this resolution shall be an amount determined by annual appropriation and shall be subject to the availability of funds. This provision of this resolution shall be administered through the office of the county trustee in the same manner as the property tax relief program of the state of Tennessee provided for in Tennessee Code Annotated 67-5701 through 67-5704. This resolution shall be effective upon its passage, approval, and the public welfare requiring it. Open the floor for a motion. Motion by Commissioner Dawson and second by Commissioner Shepard. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Simpkins.
Here.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. McElwain. Mr. Beatty. Mr. Dawson. Ms. Spicer. Mr. Buckner. Mr. Ellis. Mr. Shepherd. Mr. Corlew. Ms. Hayes.
The next is a resolution authorizing the execution, terms, issuance, sale, and payment of not to exceed $2,720,000 general obligation refunding bond series 2020 of Dickson County, Tennessee, and providing for the details thereof. This was the loan that we got in 2017 to purchase the Food Line building, to turn it into a library and county government building. We borrowed $3.5 million. We've paid this down to $2.72 million, and we're in a position now to put this on installments to continue to pay this out. This was authorized by y'all back in the last fiscal year, but we held this because we didn't want to be in the middle of a refunding while the fiscal year's closing. So it's been delayed, but we're at a point where we'd like to move forward and get this finished up tonight. I'll open the floor for a motion. Motion by Commissioner Corlew, second by Commissioner Eby. Any discussion or questions? Hearing, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ellis.
Is money from the old library being applied to this, or the $625,000?
At this point in time, we've moved that into our economic development fund to hold that. We want to get through this budget and have our books closed, but our intent is to pay down on that loan. But this loan at the $2.72 million, it is set up to be paid on installments as it is now. So we went conservative on it, but we want to pay it off earlier. Any other questions? Madam Clerk, hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Simpkins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. McElwain. Mr. Beatty. Mr. Dawson. Ms. Spicer. Mr. Buckner. Mr. Ellis. Mr. Shepherd. Mr. Corlew. Ms. Hayes.
Next item of business is appropriations of various departments for the 2000, they should be the 2020, 2021 county budget. Mr. Hall.
This first resolution here is to set the appropriations for all funds for the county.
for fiscal year 2021.
This is the budget you approved just earlier in the budget committee meeting. Any questions for Mr. I'm sorry. Motion by Commissioner Simpkins for approval. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Buckner. Any questions for Mr. Hall?
It's gonna be the final vote, right? This is just,
No, this is the final vote.
Final vote.
this is the final
It
vote
is. Yes, sir.
on this big long page over
Yes, sir. Whatever Mr. Hall is.
Yeah, it's about 4 or 5 pages.
It's the paper.
It ties all the funds, the appropriations for each fund into that one document.
here. Well, I got a question. It says county commissioner, $121,000. What's that consist of?
I think that's y'all's.
Yeah, that ties into your all's code right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, but what is it actually, I mean,
It pays you guys, and it buys some supplies like running ads in the paper for county commission meetings and that type thing.
But the great portion of that is y'all's pay for a year.
Yeah.
okay. I figured out $1,000 a month for 12 people.
Well, it's not all for pay. We're making roughly $600 a month
Yeah.
on that. So
That's-
600 times 12 months times 12. I'll get my calculator out for you. That's $86,400. So he had other costs in there, he said, for publishing notices and things of that type.
Yeah, publishing notices, tapes for taping the meetings and that type thing.
Any other questions? Any questions for any commissioner? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Simpkins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. McElwain. Mr. Beatty. Mr. Dawson.
No.
Ms. Spicer. Mr. Buckner.
Aye.
Mr. Ellis. Mr. Shepherd. Mr. Corlew. Ms. Hayes.
Resolution number 4, set tax rate levy. Mr. Hall.
Yeah, this here is a one page itself. It just breaks it down. The tax rate is $2.35. General fund gets $1.08. Highway gets 8 cents. General purpose school 78 cents. Debt service 34 cents. And general capital project 7 cents of that distribution.
Open the floor for a motion. Motion by Commissioner Hayes. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner McElwain. Any discussion or any questions for Mr. Hall?
I got one.
Mr. Eby?
What was it last year? Do you remember?
Same thing.
That's the same thing.
It's the same?
$2.35.
Any other questions for Mr. Hall? Hearing no further questions, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Simpkins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. McElwain. Mr. Beatty. Mr. Dawson.
Aye.
Ms. Spicer. Mr. Buckner.
Aye.
Mr. Ellis. Mr. Shepherd. Mr. Corlew. Ms. Hayes.
Thank you. Item number 5, Resolution 5, appropriations to nonprofit organizations. Mr. Hall.
Yeah, this right here is a breakdown. You can see, it's a one-page sheet also. It breaks down who we donate to during the year. All of these come from 172 fund, which is industrial park. Except for one item, it comes from Emergency Management Agency, the fire service. It's about the third item down, but the rest of them come from 172 fund. It's actually a little bit lower this year than last year.
Open the floor for a motion. Motion by Commissioner Hayes. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Spicer. Any questions for Mr. Hall?
Who was the first? Spicer was second. Who was the first?
Ms. Hayes.
Ms. Hayes.
I didn't know what you meant.
I'm sorry.
Any questions for Mr. Hall? Hearing no questions, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Simpkins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. McElwain. Mr. Beatty. Mr. Dawson.
Aye.
Ms. Spicer. Mr. Buckner.
Aye.
Mr. Ellis. Mr. Shepherd. Mr. Corlew. Ms. Hayes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
Next, items of business, other business. This is ratify the private act designated general sessions clerk over juvenile court. Mr. Reagan.
You may recall several months ago, this came before you, and this body voted to ask the Tennessee General Assembly to pass a private act that would transfer the clerk duties for juvenile court from the county clerk's office to General Sessions Court for purposes of aligning it with a clerk that oversees courts regularly. And so this body voted in favor of doing that. It was taken up by the General Assembly. A private act was passed. The process when there's a private act that's passed is it comes back to the county then, and the county has to ratify it by a 2/3 vote. And so it would take 8 members of you tonight to vote in favor of ratifying it in order for that to actually become law and be what happens. According to the private act, the transfer takes place effective September the 1st. And so, assuming you ratify it tonight, the wheels are already in motion with the clerks to be putting that in place. And then if you ratify it, they'll complete that process, and that will take place beginning of September 1.
Open the floor for a motion. Motion by Commissioner Shepherd to have a second. Second by Commissioner McElwain. Any questions for Mr. Reagan?
Mayor, is that gonna be elected official? I mean, would they be elected or would they just be appointed?
The juvenile court clerk is a appointed position right now. This doesn't change that into an elected position. They, instead of working for the county clerk, they'll work for the General Sessions Court clerk.
So she'll be appointed by the judge?
No, will be an employee of General Sessions
Okay.
Court.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Simpkins,
Aye.
Mr. Eby,
Aye.
Mr. McElwain, Mr. Beatty, Mr. Dawson,
Aye.
Ms. Spicer, Mr. Buckner,
Aye.
Mr. Ellis, Mr. Shepherd, Mr. Corlew, Ms. Hayes.
Thank you. Next item under other business is the industry opinion recommendation. Commissioner Corlew.
Yes, Brian drafted a resolution.
Y'all have one?
Today, correct resolution, and I'd like to just, as you all know, we discussed this at the work session. That opinion, the county commission was not in support of the fuel terminal. If you want me to, I'll just read.
Please, if you would, into your microphone to make sure everyone at home can hear.
Okay, this is a resolution expressing opposition to establishment and operation of fuel terminal along Hogan Road. Whereas this legislative body desires to express its opposition to the establishment and operation of the fuel terminal along Hogan Road in Dickson County, Tennessee. Whereas in the opinion of the legislative body, the operation of the fuel terminal at the proposed site is detrimental to the environment and is not harmonious with the surrounding community and uses of the property in the area. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the county legislative body for the county of Dickson, Tennessee, meeting in regular session on the 17th day of August 2020 in Charlotte, Dickson County, Tennessee, does hereby express its opposition to the establishment and operation of the fuel terminal along Hogan Road in Dickson County, Tennessee. Be it further resolved that this resolution is effective immediately upon passage, the public welfare requiring it.
Thank you. That is in the form of a motion by Commissioner Corlew. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Spicer. Any discussion? Commissioner Simpkins.
Guess this would be for Brian. Being this has never been brought in front of this body for any kind of vote, ruling, or anything to do, it all's been through the planning and zoning. If we sit here tonight and make a vote on this and put this into law, would this cause future litigation from the company when that time comes?
The resolution itself is a non-binding expression of the opinion of this body. It doesn't carry any weight in terms of making a decision that would grant or deny any right to the company. And so while the company might choose to reference this as an overall theme of the county's opposition to its project, this resolution in and of itself does not have any effect other than to express the opinion of the body. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Reagan? Any questions? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Simpkins?
Aye.
Mr. Eby?
Aye.
Mr. McElwain? Mr. Beatty? Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Ms. Spicer? Mr. Buckner?
Aye.
Mr. Ellis? Mr. Shepherd? Mr. Corlew? Ms. Hayes?
Thank you. Next item of business, approval of notaries. Madam Clerk.
Alexandria Baker, Brendan Deal, Pamela Edwards, Christy Harrington, Charlie Holcomb, Amanda Height, Ashley Kelso, Kim Krantz, April Mangrum, Brooke Maddox, Barbara Neblett, Allison Noakes, Rebecca Pierce, Anna Purdy, Kendall Region, Colleen Sharp.
Open the floor for a motion. Motion by Commissioner Sanford, second by Commissioner McElwain. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Simpkins?
Aye.
Mr. Eby?
Aye.
Mr. McElwain? Mr. Beatty? Mr. Dawson? Ms. Spicer? Mr. Buckner?
Aye.
Mr. Ellis? Mr. Shepherd? Mr. Corlew? Ms. Hayes?
I'm sorry, Mr. Reagan had one other item to go over in other business with you.
All right, so this body may recall at the last meeting, there was a resolution about setting a weight limit. And part of what the body requested is that Mr. Burgess's office do some work to determine what those roads would support for purposes of a weight. Late this afternoon, I did meet with Mr. Burgess, who had received that report this afternoon. I'm going to pass a copy of it out to each of you so you can take it with you. Our recommendation is that you take no action on it tonight, but that you take this and review it, and then we can have a further discussion about it at the work session in September. I will tell you just the general summary from what I've read thus far is the determination made by the engineer is that Hogan Road and 2 Mile Road have a weight capacity of 20 tons. Okay, so again, take it with you. I think everybody needs to review it. We need to have an opportunity to make sure we understand everything that's in the report, and then we'll be able to come back and have that discussion at the next meeting. So with that, I'll pass out to and Mr. Chairman, that's all I have on that.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. You still need? Yes. Make sure everybody has a copy so y'all can have that to review. We'd like to have a little discussion at this point in time. We've had a couple of issues come up. I talked with Commissioner McElwain today. As many of you know, the Highway 46 bridge, the state highway going toward Erin, right past Cedar Creek, was washed out in a flood. That bridge is on a state highway, so the state's in charge of it. I learned today that it may be as much as 10 months before we have anything done with that. So we're going to get a meeting here very quickly with TDOT to see if there's some way they can take care of that, because the unfortunate consequence is that most of the traffic is heading up the airport road and going to Van Lear that way, but there's still some traffic heading on 46, getting off Cedar Creek and then taking Old Yellow Creek Road. And if you've been down that road, about a mile to a mile and a half of that's inside Dickson County, and then it turns into Houston County. Well, it's not a very that's on our road list to be paved, I believe, this time when the highway department gets there, which that'll take care of our portion. But that road is still dangerous, and Commissioner McElwain informed me that there had been even a semi truck trying to go through there, which that, I'd hate to have met that on that road from what I know about it. But one of the issues we have in there is speeding at this point in time. For the safety of the community, I would probably like to ask at this point, if it's okay with Commissioner McElwain, that we suspend the rules to discuss setting a speed limit on that road and putting up signage that would limit, would not allow tractor trailer truck on it at this time, because that road is basically a one-lane road. What is the thoughts from the highway department? Are y'all okay with this?
Yeah, we already got a sign up saying no trucks allowed.
Okay.
We already got that, and we talked about the speed limit, and I'm fine with 35, putting 35 on the road.
Okay, is that fine? Okay, first, to take care of this business, we need to suspend the rules to take this up. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules? A motion by Commissioner Buckner, second by Commissioner McElwain. All in favor, vote by stating aye. The rules are suspended to hear this issue. You've heard that. Commissioner McElwain, are you okay? Is that your motion to set that speed limit at 35? Okay. All right, thank you. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Shepard. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor vote by stating aye. Opposed? Thank you. The other issue, and Commissioner Dawson, I'd like to get with you after. There's a one over in one of your neighborhoods, Fowler Road, and I've gotten several requests on that. So if you just have a few minutes to discuss that, we'll get that on September's agenda, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Thank you. That takes care of that. Mr. Reagan, anything else you can think of? No, that's true. Want to have a couple of quick announcements here. Commissioner Jeff Corlew, we barely got to know you, so we appreciate you putting yourself forward and serving to take the place of Commissioner Booty Reed and his unfortunate death. But you've been around county government a long time, and you've done a great job here as a member of this commission, and we know you're going to move on to bigger and better things, but we're proud you spent a year and a half with us, so thank you. Also like to introduce, I can see in our crowd tonight, we had 2 new commissioners elected because, of course, as well as Mr. Corlew not running for re-election, Jeff Spencer, as we know, resigned several months back because he moved out of the district, and so that left a vacancy there. So for Mr. Spencer's placement, there's Mr. Johnny Reed there in the back. Look forward to serving with you. And then Mr. Danny Williams for the 10th district. I think everyone knows them. They're going to be great additions to this. They're not strangers to government and in the community. So we look forward to serving them and they'll start on Tuesday, September the 8th will be their first official meeting. So the only other, is there any announcements that would like to be made? Commissioner Hayes.
I have one, and it has nothing to do with county government, but it's happy news. About 7 years ago, I made an announcement here that we had a young man whose family grew up in Charlotte, the Hassel family and the Fowler family. The young man was on the Little League World Series championship team. He had a home run, won one of the games. They ended up winning the national part, but lost to Japan in the world part. Okay, now, fast forward to this year. That same young man has been playing, has grown up in Brentwood and played in Livingston County schools, was given a full 4-year scholarship to Vanderbilt to play baseball. But he was also drafted by Major League Baseball. And he chose to go with Major League Baseball. He was the first high school player drafted this year out of the entire United States. He was number 8 overall. The first 7 were college players. He's been signed by the San Diego Padres. He is now currently ranked number 6 of their 100 top prospects. He's actually with the team, even though he's not technically playing. But he's out there in San Diego with them. And this past year, he played in the World Cup, which was over in South Korea and another country. I've forgotten which one the other one was. And these are his stats from just playing this past spring. He batted .514. He had 18 hits, DHS, and then Robert's sister, Jenny Hassel, played softball, and she was on a championship team too. They were in the late eighties, so I just want y'all to know about that. I think that's terrific, and he's the only reason right now I'm watching Major League Baseball.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Hayes.
Stands for the national anthem.
That's important too. Commissioner Hayes, I guess y'all figured out, if you haven't known, she's a pretty big baseball fan, so. She's my go-to person on baseball information. I feel like I have time for that anymore, but I'm glad she does, so she keeps up to date, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. Any other announcements? Before I make the final announcement, the commission, we need to have a short executive committee meeting after this, so as soon as we get done, if you'll just keep your places and we'll let the folks have an opportunity to get out. I think everybody knows we're on live tonight to let everybody know when you have an executive session, that's over a legal or security matter, and that's what we'll be discussing at that point in time. So if there are no other announcements, the final announcement will be the next regular session meeting will be on Monday, September 21st, 2020 at 7 p.m. Instructions on attendance will be posted in advance of the meeting on the county's website, calendar, and Facebook page. Do I have a motion, a second to adjourn? Thank you.